Welcome back and thanks for tuning in. This is where you end up in the end of the last video. I just finished drilling the two 1-inch holes into the two end pieces for the old-fashioned toolbox. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take that 1 1/8 inch piece of doweling and I'm going to turn it down to 1 inch so it'll fit really snugly into those holes, and I'm going to make it almost a friction fit because I really didn't like the look of the piece of doweling I used for the screw caddy. It was more loose, and I ended up having to fill it with a bit of glue and wood filler as well. And the end product, I mean, it was okay, it works, but it was not as nicely done as it could have been. So what I want to do here is I want to, like I said, make this a little bit better. So on the inside, these are going to fit snugly into the holes, and on the outside it's going to be just a little bit wider than it needs to be, 3/4 inch. And that way I can sand it down so it's nice and smooth, and at the end it should look really nice. And with that piece of doweling, this is going to be really a solid build. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use dowels like last time. So I'm going to glue these together, and I'm gluing it together so that none of the dowels are going to have any tensile strength on them. They're all going to be shear forces, so it should be, again, like a really quite solid build. And these two pieces here and the third piece that's going to be the other end are going to nest inside the side pieces, and again, are going to make it, like I said, as solid as possible. And one other thing I did in this particular build is I went to a 1/32 of an inch thinner drill bit. So it's just a little bit less in diameter than the actual piece of dowel. My thought process was with a much tighter fit in the holes, the dowels would hold much better. And for the most part, that's exactly what happened. It was, like I said, really nice tight fits. The glue all worked better, I mean really well I should say, and well, the pieces are all cut properly, so it all fit really well. And there's going to be one small problem coming up about it, and you can tell me what you think about it when we get there. So I'm going to glue all these, of course, and just pound them into place. I started off by setting both of them at the same time. By the end I did one at a time. I'm not sure if it had any real effect on how they went in, but for some reason I found as I was pounding them in, the second one was a little bit more stiff. I can't see how, because basically seconds between the two. But as you can see, I had to pound them into place, and well, like I said, it's very, very solid. It's just two dowels at this point, nothing else holding that together, and you didn't see any flex in it whatsoever. Like I said, it's going to be quite solid. But like I said, also there is a bit of a problem. It may be come down to the fact that, well, these are just commercial dowels I bought. They're not as necessarily uniform as they could be. Some of them might have been just a little bit thicker, or the wood could have been just a little bit softer. But like I said, I was gluing them and pounding them into place, and I think in total 3 of them didn't go in properly, and you're going to see in a second here. So I'm going to put this one in here. I'm going to start tapping it into place, and as you can see, it goes perfectly fine here, but this one just seems to wobble around a bit, and then it just smushes. Again, might have been the dowel, or it could have been the fact that these are really stiff holes. Like I said, in the end, there was 3 of those. Not a big deal considering the number of dowels I put into this. I don't think it's going to be any issues with it, but anyway, we'll see how it goes, see how it wears. So I'm going to glue this into place. Again, because it's fitting in between the two pieces on the inside, and there is a 1/8 inch lip, it would have stayed in properly anyway, but like I said, I'm making this as solid as possible. My old toolbox, as I showed you in the first video of this, the handle snapped clean off because, well, there's an awful lot of tools in this, and it weighs quite a bit. And I was concerned that, that happening again. So what I'm doing here is I'm overbuilding this, obviously. I don't need to build this at a 3/4 inch ply. But the weight of the actual toolbox compared to the amount of weight of the tools, it's inconsequential. The tools far outweigh. I mean, I think by the time I'm done with this, with everything in place, this toolbox only weighs maybe 2 to 3 pounds. which is not really anything, that's less than a big hammer. So like I said, it was I think necessary to make this as tough as possible. So I'm going to just finish these up here. I'm going to drill a couple more holes. There's one other thing I want to do for this. I do take this toolbox, or I will be taking this toolbox. I take my current toolboxes onto sites, and with weather and everything else, especially with winter coming, it's needs a cover. But I don't want to just put an ordinary lid on this. There's a couple of little features I want to put into it. And if you stay around to the end of the video there, I do have one I want to show you, which is an idea. So, and that's going to be the next video. I'm going to be putting together the lids for this, and like I said, it's like I can lift that with my arm outstretched, and there's no real issue with it. Well, of course, it has 2 more pieces to go on, but it's, like I said, not heavy enough to be of any real concern. So these pieces I had cut based on my drawings, but I had cut them a little bit high because it's very easy to trim things down. As I always say, it's very hard to add stuff back on. So I'm just going to take a thin slice off of these just to get them down to where they need to be, because like I said, when you're using dowels and glue and stuff like that to put things together, sometimes there is a small fraction of a difference between what you want it to be and what it turns out to be. In this particular case, it was perfectly fine. I could have just made it as I wanted it. Those jigs I use for my crosscut sled, they're very accurate. So I don't have to worry too much about that sort of thing. But it's always better to be safe. So I'm going to stick this on. And I do apologize for my method for holding it in place, but I don't have any kind of clamps that would work for this. But I find gravity is a really good helper for these sorts of things, and seeing how in the end result none of it moved, so it's a perfectly valid way of doing this. Though I do want to work on making some additional clamps for these sorts of things. I'm going to get this into place, move it all around, get everything set properly, and then I'm going to set a toolbox on top of it just to hold it in place while I set the dowels for it. Like I said, not pretty, but it's functional. It works. That particular toolbox holds all my bolts. It weighs about 30 pounds all by itself, so it was more than enough to hold this in place. So I'm going to just put these in here. I think I'm going to show one more where the dowel didn't quite work. But anyway, the end result is we ended up with, like I said, only 3 that didn't quite work properly. That's fine. As you can see, there's 3 right there that are perfectly good, and I think this is the one. Treated it like a nail for a few seconds, but it's just, forget it. It's just not going in. It snapped, and there's no way I could bring it back. So at this point I was thinking, well, how much of that dowel got through? So what I'm going to do here in a second is I'm going to show you, well, basically it's going to be a comparison between the length of a full dowel and I'm going to hold up the piece that broke off. In truth, the ones that broke off, the first one I think was maybe about 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch of it is not doing anything at all. It's like just sticking in a little bit. And then I think the worst case scenario is it didn't even make it through the 3/4 inch of plywood. Again, by considering the number of these I'm putting in, oh, that one just went flying. And this is, I think, the last one that's going to break off. There we go. And that's, I think, the worst case one here. It's going to hold the dowel upward. That's how much normally goes through, and that's how much is missing. So it looks like about less than 1/4 of an inch of it is actually sticking into the second layer of plywood. But that's all right. Like I said, there's a ton of dowels in this. So this is the stage I showed you at the end of the last video. This is where it was. Now I'm going to cut off all those little nubby bits sticking out, sand everything down. I'm not going to show you any of the sanding. I like the finish of this. It looks really nice. I did a little bit of sanding on the dowel itself as well, just to make it smoother. And actually, it's a nice beefy grip on it. I really like that. And yeah, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to seal this in oil, just because, well, I mean, it's going to be exposed to the elements and everything else, and I like it. I like this. It's boiled linseed oil. I suppose I could branch out and try some other ones, but this one here does the trick. It's my favorite oil for just protecting the wood. I don't mind the look. It's fine. The nice thing, actually, which may sound kind of odd, is I like the smell of it. It's I don't have to worry about fumes or anything from it, and like I said, it does the trick. I haven't had any issues with anything I've built using this as a wood protector, and yeah, as I said, there's been no reason to change it because it's just for my own use, and I just want to protect the wood. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do, well, I'm going to make some lids for this. But the lids are going to be serviceable as trays. I'll go into all the details for this in the next video, but like I said, I can't leave that open like that with all the tools. Any bit of rain or snow that gets in there, it's just going to cause so many issues with rust and everything else that I am going to really not like the end result if I do that. So these are going to be a serviceable tray. I think I'm going to put a divider in that as well, but for the moment I just want to show you this part of it. Right now it is just masking tape together, and it's going to fit upside down onto the top of the toolbox. There's going to be two of them, one for each side, and that's going to keep everything nice and snug and dry. And like I said, it's just designed to, first off, give me something to keep them protected, and then I often have to like I go on top of a ladder and I have screws and nails and all sorts of stuff, and this is going to be a nice handy little tray, and it slides right across like that, and its mate's going to be on the other side. So there you go. Let me know what you think about all this. Leave comments, and I'll see you in the next video, and bye for now.